Most people will work their entire lives and never become rich. Not because they're lazy, not because they're unintelligent, and not because the opportunities don't exist, but because they follow a financial path that was designed for stability, not wealth. A path that looks safe on the surface, predictable, responsible, even admirable. But underneath it all, it quietly locks millions of people into the same cycle for decades. Go to school, get a job, earn a salary, spend most of it, repeat for 40 years. And by the time many people finally realize what happened, most of their time is already gone. This is the financial pattern that keeps ordinary people working their entire lives while only a small percentage ever manage to build real wealth. And the strange part is, this pattern is so normal that most people never question it. But the truth is, there's a fundamental difference between people who spend their lives chasing money and people who eventually become wealthy. And that difference has almost nothing to do with how much they earn. It has everything to do with how they think about money. Because income alone has never been the true driver of wealth. If it were, the highest paid professionals in the world would all be rich beyond imagination. But that's not what we see. There are doctors living paycheck to paycheck, lawyers buried in debt, professional athletes who earn millions and still end up broke. At the same time, there are people with relatively ordinary incomes quietly building substantial wealth over time. So what's really going on? The reality most people live in starts early. From a young age, we're taught a very specific formula for success. Study hard, get good grades, find a stable job. The message is simple. If you earn a good salary, everything else will fall into place. But the world of money doesn't actually work that way. Because earning money and building wealth are two completely different games. Earning money depends on time and effort. Building wealth depends on ownership and patience. And most people never realize the difference. Instead, they enter the workforce and begin trading hours for income. Every day becomes a transaction, time exchanged for money. And at first, it feels like progress. The first paycheck feels empowering. Promotions feel like steps forward. A higher salary feels like proof that the system is working. But something else begins to happen at the same time. Lifestyle inflation quietly creeps in. As income rises, spending rises with it. A nicer apartment, a newer car, more expensive habits. None of these things seem dangerous on their own. In fact, they often feel like rewards for hard work. But over time, these decisions slowly reshape a person's financial life. The cost of living expands to match the income. And the result is that even people earning more money than ever before still feel like they're constantly catching up. Then another trap appears: debt. Credit cards make spending effortless. Loans make expensive purchases feel manageable. Monthly payments make large costs seem smaller. And before long, a portion of every paycheck is already promised to someone else. Not because of bad intentions, but because most people were never taught how money truly works. Financial education is rarely part of traditional schooling. We learn about history, math, science, but almost no one teaches the difference between income and wealth. Almost no one explains the long-term consequences of spending habits, and almost no one emphasizes the power of ownership. So people do what they were taught to do. They earn, they spend, they repeat, year after year. But the people who eventually become wealthy begin to notice something different. They realize that working for money has limits. No matter how efficient you become, there are only so many hours in a day. Even if someone doubles their salary, they're still fundamentally tied to their time. And time is the one resource that never increases. So wealthy individuals begin focusing on something else entirely: assets. An asset is something that generates value over time. It might produce income, it might grow in price, or it might quietly compound in the background. But the key difference is that an asset continues working, even when the owner isn't. This is where the real shift happens. Most people spend their energy trying to earn more money. Wealth builders spend their energy trying to own more things that produce money. And that difference might seem small, but over time it changes everything. Because assets have a powerful characteristic that income alone doesn't have. They compound. Compounding is one of the most underestimated forces in finance. At first, it looks unimpressive. Imagine someone investing a small amount of money consistently every month. In the beginning, the growth appears slow. A few dollars here, a few dollars there. It doesn't feel life-changing. But compounding works quietly. The returns begin generating their own returns. Growth builds on previous growth. Years pass, and something surprising happens. What once seemed small begins to accelerate. Money starts producing more money than the original investment itself. This is the moment when wealth begins to separate from income. Because once assets reach a certain size, they begin working independently of a person's time. This is why many wealthy individuals appear to make money while doing very little. It's not because they stopped working, it's because they spent years building systems that eventually worked for them. investments, businesses, ownership in productive assets. All of these are tools that allow money to multiply without requiring constant labor. And this leads to the one shift that changes everything. The real difference between people who stay financially stuck and those who build wealth is simple. One group spends their lives earning money. The other group spends their lives acquiring things that produce money. That's it. Not intelligence, not luck, not even income level. Ownership. A person who earns a high salary but spends everything may look successful from the outside, but their financial life remains fragile. Meanwhile, someone who steadily acquires assets, no matter how small at first, is slowly building a foundation that can grow for decades. And the earlier this shift happens, the more powerful the results become, because time amplifies good financial decisions. Small investments today can become significant wealth in the future. But the opposite is also years of spending without investing can quietly erase enormous opportunities. That's why the starting point isn't necessarily about earning more money. It's about becoming aware of how money flows through your life. Where does it go? How much is being consumed? And how much is being invested into things that can grow? For many people, the first step is simply tracking their finances honestly, understanding spending patterns, recognizing which expenses truly matter and which ones exist out of habit. The next step is creating space for ownership. Even small, consistent investments can begin shifting a financial trajectory. Over time, those investments can turn into assets, and those assets can turn into income. But perhaps the most important step is learning, because financial literacy changes the way people see money. Instead of viewing income as the final goal, it becomes a tool, a resource that can be redirected toward ownership, a way to gradually build systems that grow independently of daily effort. And this mindset shift changes how people make decisions. They start asking different questions, not just how much does this cost, but also what could this money become if it were invested instead? They begin thinking in decades rather than months. And that perspective creates a powerful advantage, because wealth rarely arrives suddenly. Despite what headlines and social media might suggest, most financial success stories are built quietly over long periods of time. Years of consistent investing, years of disciplined decisions, years of allowing compounding to do its work. It's not glamorous, it's not instant, but it's incredibly effective. And the surprising part is that this path is available to far more people than they realize. Not because everyone will become a billionaire, but because the principles of ownership, patience, and compounding work regardless of where someone starts. The biggest obstacle isn't income, it's awareness. Once someone understands the difference between earning money and owning assets, their financial life begins to look different. Decisions shift, priorities evolve, and slowly, the cycle begins to break. So if there's one idea to remember from this entire conversation, it's this. Wealth is rarely created by working harder for money. It's created by owning things that continue producing value long after the work is done. That single shift from earning to owning has changed more financial futures than almost any other principle. And the sooner someone understands it, the more powerful the results can become. If this idea resonated with you, take a moment to think about your own financial habits. What are your thoughts on wealth, money, and ownership? Share your perspective in the comments. Conversations about money can change the way we think, and sometimes one insight can completely reshape someone's future. And if you know someone who's trying to improve their financial life, consider sharing this video with them, because understanding how money truly works is one of the most valuable lessons anyone can learn. And if you'd like more insights about investing, financial awareness, and building long-term wealth, make sure to subscribe and join the conversation.